Thanks for having me. My name is Mourning-Star, and I'll be presenting about some of my background over the last few years as a graduate student. So I thought I'd start off, since we're all family now. We have a joke in my family that I retired early from the age of about 15 until I was about 24. I was a high school dropout and decided I was going to seek my fortune out doing other things other than academia. So during that time, I was a competitive freestyle skier, triathlete, and also a massage therapist. No, I don't still do massage therapy. In between there, I also was an aquatic director for YMCAs across the West Coast. And so now the joke in the family is that after all that time and being a sad pull down on the family, being a high school dropout, now they can't get my punk self out of school. After transferring about 6 or 7 times as an undergraduate, never losing a credit, I finished my bachelor's degree in mathematics at Mesa State College, and then went on to biostatistics, where I worked in a vaccine testing center on various diseases in Vermont. And didn't quite get enough still, so I went over to Colorado State and told them I wanted to be an epidemiologist. And while I was there, I filled out a number of fellowships and scholarships and things like that, and ended up winning a few. So that's how I ended up in New Zealand, actually studying international environmental and human rights law. And a lot of that was driven from my scholarship and working from the US EPA, and realizing that if we're going to study air pollution and these adverse health effects on infants and other populations that are a little bit underserved, at some point in time we as scientists have to get into the policy game and come talk to the policymakers in DC. We can't just hide out in our labs. So that's kind of what I decided I was going to do with my time in New Zealand, is study that interaction of human rights and the environment. So while I was there, part of my funding actually came from the Rotary Foundation, which is a humanitarian organization, and a lot of what I have been passionate about over the last few years is discussing these interactions between the environment, health, equity, and human rights. And so how do we actually bring that together when we're bench scientists into that sphere of policy, as well as how do we do something with the world? How do we actually be active? How do we apply this? How do we make sure that we're talking to folks about why our science is important and not just, great, we got it done? So I said, well, I'm going to get some more experiences. So I worked with Duke University as a global policy fellow. Went to the World Health Organization, spent some time there working on the Global Burden Disease Project, which is a project that, for the environmental side, I worked on lead exposure. And then I also did some work with the Environmental Protection Agency as a STAR Fellowship Scholar on air pollution and adverse health effects on infants. So, as you can see, going back to this slide again, my retirement has been paid for with a lot of hard work, so I don't really look forward to ever relaxing. So please send me any ideas you have, because I will attack them. So not that all my work is fun. I've noticed from some of the other programs, presentations, that it's always nice to hear a little bit more about people. And we did our presentations a couple nights ago. We weren't allowed to give our stats, so I'll just tell you right now, this is a nice skyline that I looked at a lot while I was in Auckland. And some of my, as you're looking at this, some of my demographic information is I'm 5'9", about 184 pounds, single. I like long walks on the beach and all that good stuff. So I thought I'd show you guys that one. So along with all the other things about keeping policy relevant to our research as well, one of the things I did while I was in New Zealand is I wanted to make sure that I was in contact with the State Department and our embassy. So this is our fortress, as it's joked in the policy arena in New Zealand. This is our fortress, our embassy there. So I actually wrote letters to the ambassador there and said, I think it'd be really great if you let me do some work in your embassy, because New Zealand has a huge environmental component to it. Agriculture is a large part of their exports and their livelihood. And so I ended up working with this guy, David Heebner, who's the ambassador, and I wrote a lot of speeches for him. A lot of what they find in the embassies is that they do a lot of work in policy and they have a lot of historical people, but scientists don't usually think about policy. And when we're going to talk about peace and our ability to actually have a safer environment, we all share that environment. And if we as environmental researchers can get in that game, the policy piece can really be a language that we can use to make sure that the world is a safer place, as well as environmentally. So I'm down to about 30 seconds here, so I'm just going to flip through a couple slides and say thanks. And so this is what my research is actually on, is turning poppy oil into a biofuel in Afghanistan as a peace relationship between the U.S. from community to community in Afghanistan. So hopefully we'll use the leftover biofuel mass from crushing the seeds as as a fertilizer to diversify their crop base, and then use the oil actually to run irrigation pumps that can actually make things work so that we can actually have a peaceful solution to our differences. So if you have any questions, I'm sure you don't. I know I answered and solved the entire world's problems in 5 minutes, but that's part of the course for me. So thanks a lot.